my name is Emily Dalsky, and thanks so much for joining me today in What Matters Most. I want to talk about the #1 trending podcast in the United States right now. At least it has been for the past couple weeks, and that is Father Mike Schmitz' Bible in a Year podcast. It's been 1 month, and I want to talk about it. Let's begin. So the Bible in the Year podcast was posted on January 1st, and within the first 48 hours, it had risen to the top of the charts. By January 12th, it had over 3.5 million downloads. This really speaks to people's desire for the Lord in this new year. My understanding is that this was really Father Mike's brainchild. What if there was a way in which people could listen to God's word in a consistent way, in a personal way, and it could be very convenient for them? And so he, with the help of the Greater Adventure Bible Timeline and Jeff Cavins, started this podcast. And it's so cool that it's in podcast form, because I think it's harder to read the Bible from cover to cover, just like sitting down and reading it without like a helpful guide. But to hear it, like you just have to press play, like it's very simple and it's proclaimed to you. I also love that it's only 20 to 25 minutes long. So if you miss a day, it's easy to catch up. And it's something that you can do, when you're driving or you're on a walk or something. It's not huge, but it's just enough to kind of permeate or saturate the day with God's word. Now, a little bit on how Father Mike sounds on the podcast, because it's important. I don't think it would be so popular if he wasn't pleasant to listen to. He has a really great cadence. He's very energetic and personable and tender in his reading. There's a lot to read in the podcast, obviously the whole Bible, and he does it in such a way that you can tell he's prepared. He masters these Old Testament pronunciation names like a champ. I'm really impressed. So that's really helpful too. He's not stumbling over things. He keeps things moving, and it sounds a little bit like an audiobook in the sense that when he's doing the readings, you get the inflections and you get the voices. It's just really intentionally done, and I appreciate that. So the podcast is broken into 3 parts: the reading for the day, the prayer, and then the reflection. So the reading takes about half of the podcast. And right now, the first month has been walking through Genesis and through Job and through Proverbs and some of the Psalms. The second part of the podcast is a prayer that Father Mike offers, and it's from his heart, and it's so beautiful. It's probably one of my favorite parts of the whole podcast, because he just offers this simple, quick prayer based on what he had just read and how it relates to everyday life and what we're going through as humans. Super helpful, super encouraging, also just super beautiful to hear his heart as a priest and as a father. And the third part of the podcast is the reflections, and I love Father Mike's take on things. It's very applicable and pointed, and also, again, that faithful guide to help, if I'm kind of stuck in the weeds about a certain character, he's able to bring it out, or a really confusing passage, he's able to kind of help us zoom out and think about it kind of big picture. So it's just been so helpful. So it's only been a month, and already I just feel so much change by listening to this podcast, to hear God's word proclaimed in my ears every day. The life just takes on a new hue, and I've been super grateful for that. I am beginning to see myself within the story, which is what Father Mike always encourages us, like how we fit into this story, into God's story. Also, there are so many competing voices for our attention, from the media, from friends, from family, from our own heads, and it's awesome to begin to hear God's voice among them. But I pray, as we walk throughout this year, to hear God's voice above them, above all of the noises and voices that we hear in the world. So there's my 1-month review and thoughts on this awesome Bible in a Year podcast. If you are wondering if you should jump onto the bandwagon, I highly recommend. It's not a bad wagon. It's not a bad bandwagon to jump on. I'd love to hear your ideas and thoughts in the comment section below, and feel free to subscribe to join the conversation. Thanks so much. Take care. God bless.